The sun was burning hot over the city of Khartoum, the capital of Sudan. The streets were filled with noise, voices, footsteps, cars honking, and the far sound of drums from a market. But above all that noise, there was fear. A quiet fear that lived inside the hearts of two young men named Yusuf and Daniel. They were friends. Not just any friends, but brothers in faith. They prayed together, sang together, and shared a small Bible that they hid under an old mattress. Every night, they whispered about Jesus, softly, carefully, because in their city, talking about him could get you into serious trouble. Still, they never stopped. They believed that light must shine even in the darkest night. One evening, the air changed. Soldiers came marching down the street, their boots thumping like thunder. Someone had told on them. Someone had whispered to the wrong ears, "Those two talk about Jesus." The soldiers broke into their small room. The door flew open with a loud crash. Yusuf and Daniel didn't fight back. They were calm. Daniel quietly held Yusuf's hand. "Don't be afraid," he whispered. "Jesus is with us." They were dragged outside. The people around watched but said nothing. Some cried. Some just stared. The soldiers shouted, calling them traitors and unbelievers. Yusuf and Daniel were taken to a tall, half-broken building, a building that looked like a tower reaching for the sky. The air was heavy. The smell of dust, blood, and fear filled their lungs. At the top of the building, they could see the whole city below, the houses like tiny boxes, the streets like brown lines drawn in the sand. One of the soldiers laughed and said, "If your Jesus is real, let him save you." The world seemed to stop. Daniel looked at the sky. He wasn't shaking. His eyes were full of peace. "Even if we die," he said softly, "we will not be lost." Then he turned to Yusuf and smiled. "Brother, we are going home." The soldiers pushed them closer to the edge. The wind grew louder, howling like a beast. Dust swirled around them. Yusuf whispered, "Jesus, into your hands we give our lives." And then, they were pushed. They fell. The sky spun. The wind screamed. The ground rushed up fast, faster, faster. People below screamed, some turned away, some shouted, "They are dead." But then something happened, something no one could explain. As their bodies neared the ground, the wind changed. A soft, bright light, like gold mixed with fire, wrapped around them. They did not hit the ground the way everyone expected. Instead, it was like invisible hands caught them. They landed gently, as if on a bed of air. The soldiers above froze. The people watching fell silent. The crowd's eyes widened. Daniel slowly opened his eyes. He was alive. Yusuf touched his face. Not a bone broken, not a wound bleeding. And from somewhere deep in the light, they heard a voice, soft but full of power. "My children, I am with you." The crowd fell to their knees. The soldiers trembled. Some ran. Some dropped their guns. The story would spread through the city that night. Whispers of two men thrown to die, but saved by a power no one could see. That day, something began to change in Sudan. But this was only the beginning. The air was still thick with dust and wonder. People gathered around Yusuf and Daniel, afraid to touch them but unable to look away. The place where they had fallen was quiet, too quiet, like the whole world was holding its breath. Yusuf looked at Daniel, still trembling a little. "Are you alive?" he whispered. Daniel smiled faintly. "I think so." He touched his chest. His heart was beating, strong and steady. Then they both looked at their hands. No cuts, no blood, not even dust. Their clothes were torn, but their bodies were untouched. A woman in the crowd gasped, "It's a miracle." Another man shouted, "Impossible." But the truth was shining right before their eyes. The light that had caught them was fading slowly, but it left behind a strange glow. It clung to the ground where they stood, like golden dust in the air. It was soft, warm, and peaceful. The same soldiers who had thrown them off the building now stood frozen above, watching. One of them dropped his gun. His face was pale. We saw them fall," he stammered. "They should be dead." But Daniel raised his hand and spoke, his voice calm yet powerful. "You meant to destroy us," he said. "But Jesus gave us life again." His words carried through the street like thunder wrapped in light. Even the wind seemed to listen. Soon, the commander, a tall man with a scar across his face, came down from the building. He had seen many things in battle, but never this. He walked toward them slowly, his boots crunching over broken glass. "Who did this?" he demanded, though his voice trembled. Daniel looked up at him. "The one who loves even you," he said softly. For a moment, silence hung between them. The commander's eyes flickered, fear, confusion, and something else. He had grown up hearing of miracles, but he never believed. Now, the proof stood breathing before him. Still, he could not let the crowd think he was weak. "Take them away," he barked, but none of the soldiers moved. They were staring, not at Daniel or Yusuf, but at the faint light still glowing under their feet. It shimmered like the reflection of heaven on the earth. A little boy ran forward from the crowd, tears in his eyes. He knelt beside them and whispered, "Jesus saved you." Daniel knelt too, his hand resting gently on the boy's shoulder. "Yes," he said, "and he can save you too." The boy's mother came running, grabbed her son, and began to cry. "I believe," she whispered. "I believe in your Jesus." And that's how it began. One voice after another, in whispers and gasps, people started saying the same words. "I believe, I believe." The soldiers looked around, unsure what to do. The commander clenched his fists. "Enough," he shouted. "Everyone go home." But the people didn't move. Something had changed inside them. A fire had been lit that no order could put out. That night, Yusuf and Daniel were taken away secretly by a kind old man named Hassan. He hid them in his house on the edge of the city. As they sat together, the old man said quietly, "What I saw today will change Sudan forever." Daniel nodded. "It wasn't for us to survive," he said. "It was for others to see that Jesus is alive." Outside, the wind blew softly, carrying the sound of prayers rising from homes across the city, quiet, trembling prayers filled with new faith. And somewhere in the darkness, the same light that had caught them shimmered once more, watching, protecting, guiding. The miracle was only the beginning. A greater purpose was yet to unfold. The night was quiet in Khartoum, but not peaceful. Something was stirring. Something powerful, unseen, like the wind before a storm. In a small room lit by a weak oil lamp, Commander Karim, the man who gave the order to throw Yusuf and Daniel off the building, could not sleep. He kept seeing their faces, falling, glowing, landing without dying. The image burned inside his head. He poured water into a metal cup, but his hands were shaking. "What did I see?" he muttered. "How can a man fall from such height and live?" Outside his window, the desert wind blew, carrying dust across the city. It whispered softly, almost like a voice calling his name. "Karim." He froze. He looked around. No one was there. But the voice came again, gentle yet strong. "Karim, why do you fight what you already know is true?" He dropped the cup. The water spilled across the floor. His heart pounded. "Who's there?" he shouted. But there was only silence, and the faint echo of the name Jesus in his memory. Far across the city, in Hassan's small house, Yusuf and Daniel were awake too. They could not sleep either. Daniel sat by the window, looking at the stars. "I can still feel it," he said softly. "Feel what?" Yusuf asked. "The hands that caught us," Daniel whispered. "It was not wind. It was him." Yusuf nodded. "I know. But now they will come after us again." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then we will shine again." Just as he said that, they heard footsteps outside, many footsteps. Hassan hurried into the room. "Soldiers," he whispered. "They're searching the houses." The three of them looked at each other. There was no time to run. Outside, the sound of boots grew louder. Commander Karim was among them. His face looked tired, his eyes shadowed. He pointed toward Hassan's home. "Search there." The soldiers burst through the door, shouting, by order of the command, "Come out." Yusuf and Daniel stepped forward slowly, not afraid. When Karim saw them alive again, standing just a few steps away, his knees went weak. "It's you," he whispered. Daniel nodded. "Yes, Commander. We are still alive." The other soldiers gasped. Some had seen them fall. Some had even helped push them. But now, here they stood, calm, glowing faintly in the dim light, their eyes gentle yet fierce like fire. Karim raised his hand to order their arrest, but his voice broke. "What are you?" he asked. Daniel looked at him and said, "We are just men. But we serve the one who cannot die. A sudden gust of wind blew through the room, even though every door and window was closed. The lamp flickered. A light shimmered, soft but powerful, and filled the small house. Every soldier dropped his weapon. Some fell to their knees. One whispered, "This is not human." Another cried, "Forgive us, God." The light grew brighter until it wrapped everyone in warmth. In that light, Karim saw flashes: his childhood, his sins, his hatred, his lost peace. He began to cry. "I don't understand," he said, tears falling down his face. "Why didn't your God let you die?" Daniel stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Because he wanted you to live." The room went still. For the first time in years, Karim felt something he had long forgotten: mercy. That night, some soldiers ran away in fear. Others stayed, kneeling in silence. Karim knelt too. "Tell me," he whispered, "how can I know this Jesus?" Yusuf smiled gently. "The same way we did," he said. "By asking him to enter your heart." And there, in the quiet of that desert night, the man who once ordered death found life. Tears fell like rain as the soldiers prayed with them. Outside, the stars burned brighter than ever. And from far above, the same invisible hands that caught Yusuf and Daniel seemed to spread across Sudan. Reaching for more hearts, more lives, more souls. The miracle was no longer a secret. It was becoming a movement. By morning, Khartoum was whispering. The story of the two men who fell and lived had spread faster than the desert wind. People in markets, homes, and schools were talking, not in loud voices, but in careful, trembling ones, as if afraid the miracle might vanish if spoken too loudly. Everywhere, someone said, "Did you hear? They didn't die." Another replied, "They said a light caught them." And another whispered, "Maybe Jesus really is alive." Meanwhile, in Hassan's house, Yusuf and Daniel sat quietly. The sun poured through the window, painting gold lines on the floor. Hassan smiled as he brought them bread and water. "The city is burning," he said softly. "Not with fire, but with faith." Daniel looked up, surprised. "Already?" "Yes," Hassan said. "The soldiers who came here last night are telling people what they saw. Some say they saw an angel. Others say they felt peace for the first time in their lives." He paused, then added, "Even Commander Karim has disappeared. No one knows where he went." Yusuf and Daniel exchanged glances. "He is searching," Yusuf said quietly. "When a man meets truth, he can never rest until he follows it." Days passed, then weeks. The miracle would not fade. Instead, it grew. A woman who had been sick for many years came to see them. She touched their hands and whispered, "Pray for me." When they prayed, she stood up strong and healthy, shouting, "He healed me." In another town nearby, a group of children were seen praying in the streets. They said a shining man told them, "Jesus is here." The government tried to stop the stories, but the stories had already taken wings. They were no longer just words, they were fire. A quiet, holy fire that burned in hearts, in whispers, in dreams. One night, Daniel dreamed again. He saw the same light that had caught them when they fell. From the light came a voice that said, "My sons, the miracle was never only for you. Go, tell them I am alive." He woke up shaking, tears in his eyes. "Yusuf," he said, "we must go." "Go where?" Yusuf asked. "To every village," Daniel replied, "to every person who still thinks God has forgotten them." Hassan stood in the doorway, smiling sadly. "You know they will try to stop you," he said. Daniel nodded. "They can stop our bodies," he said, "but not the message." And so they began to travel. First to small villages outside Khartoum, then to the desert towns beyond. They walked on foot, carrying nothing but faith and a torn Bible. Everywhere they went, people gathered, hundreds, sometimes thousands. They didn't come to see men who survived a fall, they came to meet the one who made them live. In one town, a blind boy began to see again after they prayed. In another, a woman who hated God began to sing songs of love and hope. Soon, firelight burned in the night, not fires of destruction, but fires of worship. Villages glowed under the moonlight as voices rose together. "Jesus is alive! Jesus is alive!" Back in the city, the government grew nervous. "What is happening?" One official shouted. "We tried to silence them, and now the whole nation is listening." But even they could feel it. The air was different. It carried peace. Some nights, soldiers who once hunted believers now knelt in prayer. Homes that were once filled with fear now echoed with hymns. The light that caught 2 men from death had caught an entire land. And far away, hidden somewhere in the mountains, Commander Kareem sat alone by a small fire. He looked up at the stars and whispered, "You really are alive." Tears ran down his face. He had been forgiven, and now he understood. The miracle was not about survival. It was about awakening. Across Sudan, hearts were waking up. To love, to hope, to the power that could turn death into life. The fire was spreading, and no one could stop it. Months had passed since the miracle. The cities and villages of Sudan were no longer the same. In every corner of the land, from the crowded streets of Khartoum to the quiet huts near the Nile, people whispered one name with hope: Jesus. The government could not silence it. The soldiers could not stop it. Even those who once hated it now found peace in it. But Yusuf and Daniel were growing tired. They had walked far, told the story 1,000 times, prayed for the sick, comforted the broken, and faced new dangers every day. Yet through it all, they never stopped smiling. Because they had seen death, and met life himself. One evening, as the sun was setting like a red jewel over the desert, the 2 friends sat beside a river. The wind was cool, and the reflection of the sky danced on the water. Daniel spoke softly, "Yusuf, do you ever wonder why he saved us?" Yusuf nodded. "At first, I thought it was only to prove his power. But now I know, it was to show his love." Daniel smiled. "Yes, his love is the real miracle." Just then, a figure appeared on the other side of the river, tall, bright, and shining like the sun. They both knew who it was. Their hearts trembled, but not with fear, with peace. The figure spoke, and his voice was like music and thunder at once. "My children, you have done well. You carried my name through fire and storm. You were thrown down, but I lifted you up so that others might rise too." Yusuf fell to his knees. "Lord, we are not worthy." The light shimmered gently. "You were never worthy," the voice said, "but my love made you enough." And then, the same golden light that once caught them began to surround them again, not to save them this time, but to take them home. Meanwhile, far away in Khartoum, Hassan was sitting outside his home when he looked up at the sky. The night was still, but then a glow began to appear, not like lightning, not like fire, but like heaven itself opening. He felt a warmth in his chest, and tears filled his eyes. "They're going home," he whispered. All across Sudan, people saw it too, a golden light stretching across the clouds, beautiful and silent. Some fell to their knees. Some sang. Some wept. And as the light slowly faded, the wind carried a whisper that every heart could feel. "Do not be afraid, I am with you always." Days later, no one could find Yusuf or Daniel. Their footprints ended by the river, and the only thing left behind was their old, torn Bible, open to the page that said, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will never die." The people kept that Bible as a treasure. It was passed from hand to hand, from city to city, until it reached even the smallest villages. Every time someone read it, they felt the same peace that had filled the air that day. Children grew up hearing the story of 2 men who fell from a building but never touched the ground. They grew up believing that Jesus was not just a story, but a living friend, strong enough to catch anyone who falls. Years passed. Sudan was still a land of struggle and pain, but under it all, a quiet river of faith flowed, strong, unstoppable. The fire that had started with Yusuf and Daniel never went out. It lived in every heart that whispered, "Jesus, I believe." And somewhere beyond the clouds, 2 bright lights shone side by side, Yusuf and Daniel, smiling down on the land they had loved, the land that had once thrown them down, but had risen in faith because they dared to stand. The miracle was complete. The story had come full circle. And the light, the same light that once caught them, would never leave Sudan again. Summary. In Sudan, 2 young Christians, Yusuf and Daniel, were thrown from a tall building for their faith, but instead of dying, they were caught by a shining light and gently placed on the ground. The people who saw it were shocked. Even the soldiers trembled. From that day, the miracle spread through the land. Hearts were changed, enemies became believers, and the message of Jesus lit Sudan like fire in the desert. Through pain and persecution, Yusuf and Daniel carried God's love across the nation until the same light that saved them came again to take them home. Their story became a flame of hope that no one could ever put out. Moral lesson: no power on earth can destroy those who walk with Jesus. Faith may be tested, but it can never be defeated. When life throws you down, God's invisible hands can still lift you higher than before. Just like Yusuf and Daniel, stand firm, because miracles still happen when you believe. The end.